In this video, I show you the Torch and Shield Kickstarter. But before we get into today's video, just want to share with you what the GGGGs are for this month. Each month, Bob the Beholder picks some of my Patreon supporters to receive gratitude gifts. And for this month of October of 2023, we have this printed and painted Forbidden War terrain. We have 2 pledges for the Forbidden War terrain. We have $100 going towards a crowdfunder campaign, which my Patreon supporters are currently voting upon. And we have 2 pledges for this campaign as well. Go ahead and use the link below to go to my Patreon page where you can get in on the possibility of being chosen for one of these awesome gratitude gifts by Bob at the end of the month. And it only takes $1 for you to get a chance for that. Also use the links below if you want to go check out the Kickstarter page for Torch and Shield. That campaign is going to be going on until November 9th. This video is broken up into 3 different sections. One is to just go over my general thoughts and feelings about the game, as well as the miniatures that come with it. And then I am going to walk you through the Kickstarter campaign. And then finally, I'm going to do a really quick rulebook overview for you. If you want to use the timestamps below to skip to any of those sections, feel free to do so. So Grimskald Games did reach out to me, asked me if I would be willing to do a review, and I was happy to do so. One of the first things to know about this game is that it reminds me a lot of Frostgrave, where you have your band and you're going into this dungeon to loot it and to fight with the other clans, where there's also wandering monsters that you're fighting. So in many ways, if you're familiar with Frostgrave or the sci-fi version Stargrave, this sort of fits within the same genre. But as I walk you through some of the rulebook, I'm going to note some of the differences that is coming from this rule set. But right off the bat, I think this is a really interesting setting with interesting backstory. One of the things that I really like about the rulebook is it does have a lot of lore that's in it, which is something that I really enjoy with gaming systems. And Torch and Shield does not disappoint, as it gives background information about the history, why these dwarves are inside of these dungeons, as well as some of the political dynamics that's going on between the dwarves and the other races. So super interesting, just a really fun read. If you like that kind of fluff in your rulebooks, Torch and Shield does have that. Also, they did send me STL files for the miniatures, which I have here. I've only had time to really paint one. I just wanted to show you what they look like. But these miniatures look great. They're fantastic. Whether or not you get the STL version or you get the fully printed Siocast boxes, that is also part of the Kickstarter. Obviously, it's a lot cheaper if you do print your own and just get the STL files. But again, we'll walk through all of the options when we look at the Kickstarter page. I think that these miniatures do look great, and they have plans for, I think, 3 different factions of dwarves, but clearly you can mix and match the dwarves. And one of the things that is true is that it is WYSIWYG, or what you see is what you get, in the sense that whatever weapons or shields or loadout that you see on the miniature is what they are holding. Of course, you can choose not to play WYSIWYG, but because the STL files, you can print out unlimited number of miniatures as well as weapons and things that they're holding, because these do print without anything on their hands, so you can totally swap out and kit them out any way that you want. They were also super fast to paint up. I painted up this little guy with some contrast colors and was able to finish that up really quickly, and with some basing. Now, I did use my own FDM printed bases just because I like inserting a magnet at the very bottom, but all of these miniatures do come with their own bases if you want to use the ones that Grimskald Gaming provides for you. Also, part of the campaign is going to be a dungeon set. Again, both STL files as well as a 3D printed version for you. Here I have dungeon blocks, just a really quick setup, but you can use any other dungeon set that you have, including just 2D tiles that you might have from a host of other games. So really, the sky's the limit in terms of any of the dungeons. If you already have a set of your own, you can totally use that. They do have a bunch of scenarios in the back of the book. Again, we'll take a look at that when we go through the rule book. But let's go ahead and go over to the computer and I can walk you through the campaign. Go ahead and use the link below to go to this Kickstarter page if you're interested. And this has been posted for about a day and already it's raised almost $15,000. So I do believe that this will be a very successful campaign. It is going to be ending on November 9th. So let's take a look here on the page as it's going to talk about the different tiers here that is reflected here to the right. But at the cheapest level is $25. You get a PDF of the rulebook as well as all of the tokens and tiles, so you can print those out yourself if you want. The Clansman tier is a printed rulebook, which, you know, I really do like having a PDF, but I actually prefer having a physical copy. So I tend to back where I can at least get a physical rulebook. And then this is if you want just one set of dwarves, one clan, and that's going to be $32, and these are all Siocast. The Thane tier for $106 US is getting you the printed book, all of these wandering monsters, as well as 2 clans that you can battle with. So this is actually a pretty good deal if you want to get started with 2 different clans, and then you're having a physical miniatures for all of those things. This is your all-in tier, $225. That's going to get you everything. You're going to get all 3 clans of dwarves as well as the wandering monsters, but you're also getting the walls and floors for the dungeon. You are able to get STL files for this, for the STL version, which is right here. That's $63. So you can print these out yourself if you wanted. If I was backing this project, I would definitely be getting it at the $63 tier because I can 3D print all of my miniatures as well as the dungeon tiles. But I might throw in the extra to get a physical copy of the rulebook. There's the merchant tier. And then here's unlocked add-ons where you have, again, an additional rulebook for $44. The different clan boxes each is $32. If you only want the STLs, you can get that for $23, which is pretty cheap. You can get the dungeon set for another $23. It's a little confusing here because it's showing, well, I think these are tokens, not the dungeon set. You get all of the monsters for $42. And then if you wanted printed punch-out boards and tiles, that's going to be $35. This talks about the rulebook, gives you some screenshots of what the rulebook looks like, but I'll be walking you through the rulebook later on in this video. This talks about gameplay, and you do use a deck of cards for initiative, which I think is really creative. Talks about enemy having their own AI. And then here are some tutorial videos that they came out with. I would definitely watch these. It will give you a much better sense of how the game plays, since I don't really do a gameplay walkthrough with my video. This talks about the different factions. And like I mentioned, I can attest to the STLs being really good. These are painted really well, so check out that. This talks about what Siocast is. And then this is more fluff down here. Here are some stretch goals. Where at 20K, they're going to be able to have some solo scenarios as well as playing cooperatively if you don't want to play head-to-head. Some stretch goals for both 30 and 40. And then here are some reviews. And then they talk about the future where they have already produced an expansion, so you know that they're going to be committed to this game. And shipping prices here. And that's pretty much it. Alright, so this is the rulebook sort of walkthrough. I'm going to go through this really quickly. Not going to spend a ton of time on it, just so that you can get a sense of what the rulebook looks like. And the thing I actually like about this is that it is limited with a number of color pages, which I know you might want more color pages, but what it does is it makes it so that printing out the PDF is actually relatively cheap that way, since it's mostly black and white, and that you don't have to choose to print out most of the rulebook out in color. So just know that. I actually appreciate that. I know some people would rather have more color, but for me, when I print out PDFs, I would much rather have it be black and white friendly. So this is sort of the background and some of the history and the reason why these different clans are going into these dungeons and delving for treasure and things like that. Again, it's going to be a lot like Frostgrave, where people are going in to get treasure. And this is one of the unique mechanics that I really like, where it isn't just you go, I go, but rather it's based off of just luck, where you might go 2 or 3 times before the other person goes. So I actually like that mechanic where the initiative is a little bit unpredictable. That is a really neat feature of this rule set. Here it talks about your various stats, so again, very familiar with that stat block. And I don't think the game is like super complicated. Again, it's at the same level of Frostgrave in terms of complication, and you can always remove the wandering monsters if you don't want to have to deal with those. In fact, first couple of games I would probably not have wandering monsters as part of the scenario, just so that you can get to know it. And again, here is some of the fluff, the lore that I really appreciate and like a lot, and that's going to be throughout this book. So I really like this rule book. I enjoyed reading through it, and the lore is something that really just adds a lot of flavor to rule sets, which I appreciate. So it gives you all of the rules that you need to be able to play this game, gives you a lot of good examples. Wandering monsters, again, are functioning pretty similarly as it does with Frostgrave. And I like that they give you a variety, and I also like the fact that they provide STL files that match the different monsters that are in here. Also, all the terrain features, you can pretty much, I think most people who have STL files for dungeons, you're going to pretty much have these terrain features. So that's going to be accessible to most people. And what's really cool is there is a huge variety of weapons that your dwarves can hold, and it sort of changes their stats and abilities that way. So I really like that a lot. Gives you a ton of different things that you can equip your dwarves with, and it makes them unique that way. Here are the scenarios. So this is a standard scenario where this gray is actually the wall, and then these yellows is the doors. So the dungeons themselves aren't huge, but again, if you want to just print out the PDF of the tiles, you can totally do that. But of course, I love having a 3D dungeon set, and if you have any kind of dungeon set is going to work with this game system. But of course, if you don't have that yet and you want to get into 3D printing, they provide the STLs for you to be able to print out this dungeon set as well. With a bunch of different traits, here is instructions on crew creation. Then I'm going to skip here to the back. There is a solo play option, which I think is really fun. And this is, just like in Frostgrave, you can have a campaign where you level up your heroes or characters, or death can affect your clan. And then back here are the cards, and this is why I'm glad that they offer this as a PDF for those who do purchase the book, because then you're able to just print out these cards and cut them out and use them. There's some reference sheets here in the back, which again I like a lot. So there you have it for the book. So there you go. Please like and subscribe. Hopefully this video was helpful for you in terms of whether or not this is a campaign that you want to jump in on. Thanks to Grimskald Games for sending me these STL files, as well as the rulebook, which I always like a physical copy, so I appreciate that as well. Again, use the link below to go to my Patreon page if you are interested in the possibility of being chosen by Bob to receive one of the 2 pledges for this campaign. Otherwise, happy gaming. We'll see you next time.